In our last lesson, we talked about how various sections of the Indian society had joined hands to fight against the British East India Company in the Great Revolt of 1857. But India gained independence from the Britishers in the year 1947. But why don't we say that 1857 was the year when India gained independence from the Britishers? This is because Indians, though they believed that they were in the process of gaining complete independence and freedom from the British East India Company in that very revolt of 1857, they were not able to do so. This is because the company fought back. The company was also in no way willing to have the Indian masses establish their authority. The East India Company was reluctant to give up its power, which is why it also fought back. And after many years of fighting and constant rebellion and uprisings and a lot of bloodshed, the Indians gained their independence from the British colonial rule on 15th August 1947. In this lesson, we will be focusing on how the British East India Company fought back after being initially unprepared and how it managed to suppress and thwart the revolt of 1857 from becoming a complete freedom movement. And here we will be focusing on how the British East India Company repressed the revolt with all its might. Firstly, reinforcements were brought from England. Initially, the East India Company was caught off guard simply because it was not prepared. It did not foresee that the Indian masses would break out in rebellion in such huge numbers. They thought that the issue with the paper cartridges of the Enfield rifle would subside soon, which is why they were not at all prepared to face a full-scale uprising. But when it happened, they started bringing reinforcements from England to strengthen their authority over the lands and the people in the Indian subcontinent. After this, they also passed many new laws to convict the rebels very easily. Because at this point of time, they were in power, in authority over the land, which is why they had the power to pass new laws, and these laws were tasked to do one thing, to convict the rebels so that the uprising could be thwarted, so that the uprising could be stopped from spreading any further to several regions in the subcontinent. At the same time, the main centers of revolt were stormed. In our last lesson, we talked about how several focal points of the revolt of 1857 came up in northern and central parts of the Indian subcontinent. Now, after preparing themselves, after mobilizing the British Indian Army, these main centers of revolt were stormed. And why were these stormed? These were stormed simply with the intention of breaking the morale and the courage and confidence of the Indian rebels. They wanted to thwart the rebellion completely. And last but not the least, the Britishers also had access to better arms and ammunitions. Now, the Indians were using outdated weapons, but on the other hand, while reinforcements were brought from England, these people, as in the British Indian Army, now had better arms and ammunitions. And with these better arms and ammunitions, they could now counter the Indian rebellious masses. Another very important thing that happened at this point of time during the revolt of 1857 was the capture of Delhi. We learned how the rebellious masses proclaimed Bahadur Shah Zafar as the Emperor of India. Now, Delhi has been the seat of power in the Indian subcontinent. And when Bahadur Shah Zafar now went back to the Red Fort and was proclaimed the Emperor of India, the Indian masses also found determination, courage and hope in this. They thought that they would now be able to fight against the British East India Company. And now let me give you an example in this regard. Consider a game of chess. In a game of chess, one person will always try to defeat the opponent's pawns. But simply by defeating the opponent's pawns, as in the elephants or soldiers of the opponent, this one person cannot emerge victorious, because this person will always eye the king of the opponent. And likewise, the British East India Company officials also did the same. They again wanted to capture the Emperor of India, which was Bahadur Shah Zafar. So what did they do? They first recaptured Delhi from the rebellious forces in September 1857. And what happened to Bahadur Shah Zafar? Now Bahadur Shah Zafar was sentenced to life imprisonment in Rangoon, because they knew that if they could demolish and destroy this very symbol of power that was Bahadur Shah Zafar, they would be able to attack the determination and courage of the rebellious masses. And likewise, they sentenced Bahadur Shah Zafar to lifetime imprisonment in Rangoon. So Bahadur Shah Zafar was now deported to Rangoon, and Delhi was now once again under the control and power of the British East India Company. Now before proceeding with this lesson, let me ask you a question. When was Delhi recaptured by the British forces? Was it recaptured in September 1857, June 1857, October 1857 or May 1857? Well, the correct answer is September 1857. After recapturing Delhi from the rebellious masses in September 1857, the British forces now deported Bahadur Shah Zafar to Rangoon, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment. Now Bahadur Shah's wife Begum Zinat Mahal was also imprisoned with him, and she was also sent to Rangoon for life imprisonment. And Bahadur Shah Zafar passed away in prison in 1862. Unfortunately enough, his sons were shot right before him. We had learned that Lord Dalhousie had announced that Bahadur Shah Zafar's sons would not be given any official recognition as the kings. But during the revolt of 1857, Bahadur Shah Zafar, after being proclaimed the Emperor of India, was filling the minds of the Indian masses with hopes. They thought that he would once again rule as the Emperor of the subcontinent, and they, as in the Indian masses, would be able to live freely in his governance. But they were wrong to assume so, because the British power was also very powerful. It was almost unvanquishable at this point of time, and Bahadur Shah Zafar was imprisoned and sent to Rangoon, and his sons were shot dead right before him. Now it took the British 2 long years to suppress the massive forces of popular rebellion. We will be wrong to assume that the imprisonment of Bahadur Shah Zafar meant a complete end for the revolt of 1857. Though they were now low in spirits because the Emperor of India was imprisoned, they were also not to be vanquished entirely. The masses were trying to fight in whatever way they could, which is why it was also quite difficult for the British forces to suppress the rebellion almost instantly. It took 2 long years to suppress this rebellion and bring it to an end completely. Now let us briefly look at those focal points of the revolt of 1857 and what happened when the Britishers were trying to suppress the revolt. Lucknow was taken in March 1858. Now we have learned that the son of the deposed Nawab Wajid Ali Shah had gained control over Lucknow, and he had once again started ruling the kingdom of Awadh. But Bijris Qadar was defeated and Lucknow was taken in March 1858. Soon after, Rani Lakshmi Bai was also killed in June 1858. We learned how this very brave warrior passed away in action. She gave a very tough fight against the Britishers. She was fighting single-handedly to protect Jhansi, but unfortunately she was killed in action in 1858. And Tatia Topi was killed in April 1859. We have learnt how Rani Lakshmibai had joined hands with the general of Nana Sahib, that was Tatia Topi. And together they fought many successful battles against the Britishers, but unfortunately he was also killed in April 1859. So this means that the regions that they were leading were also going under the control of the British East India Company. Lucknow was taken in March 1858. With the death of Rani Lakshmibai, Gwalior was taken, Jhansi was taken, and at the same time Tatia Topi's death also meant a huge blow to the Indian rebellious masses. Now with this, the British once again regained its power in the subcontinent. At this point of time, the Britishers were trying their best to vanquish the Indian rebellious masses, because the revolt of 1857 had attacked the very foundation of the British East India Company's rule in the subcontinent, which is why they left no stones unturned to suppress the revolt. Over time, the Indian rebellious masses also started losing their way. Firstly, an absence of national leadership was a very crucial point that led to the failure of the Indian masses, and at the same time, an overall lack of unity and coordination among the Indian rulers and use of outdated weapons caused the failure of the Indian rebels. Now, if we look at this map closely, we will be able to understand that the revolt of 1857 was mostly happening in the northern and central parts of the Indian subcontinent. But what do you think was happening in the southern parts? Nothing was happening here during the revolt of 1857, which is why the revolt of 1857, or the first war of independence as it is also called, failed to leave a mark in the Indian subcontinent, because it was not very successful in fighting back the British East India Company. But it nevertheless attacked the foundation of the East India Company, as we mentioned. But there was no proper unity and coordination among the masses. Now, this was not a time of social media and advanced modes of communication. This was a time when various news spread through words. And eventually, over the years, the revolt failed to reach to the southern parts of the subcontinent. And the Indian rulers and masses were also not very well coordinated. So these uprisings and revolts over time remained very local in nature. And these Indian rebellious masses were also using outdated weapons. Whereas the Britishers were bringing very strong reinforcements from England. And against those reinforcements, against those very modernized weapons and arms and ammunitions, the Indian rebellious masses' outdated weapons could not leave a mark. So these were the reasons that eventually contributed to the failure of the revolt of 1857. So in this lesson, we have talked at great length the course that the Great Revolt of 1857 took and the various reasons that actually led to the failure of the Indian rebels. But this is not to say that the East India Company was not threatened and attacked by the rebellious masses. The East India Company had its foundation completely shaken, which is why the East India Company's rule also came to an end with the revolt of 1857. In our subsequent lesson, we will be focusing on the aftermath or the results that the revolt of 1857 had in the longer run. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it's rewarding too. So register for free now.